Have you ever looked at the traditional retirement age of 65 and just assumed that's when you're supposed to stop working? Maybe you've been planning your entire career around hitting 65, collecting Social Security, and finally enjoying the freedom you've earned after 4 decades of work. Or perhaps you've calculated your retirement savings based on a 65 retirement date and felt confident everything would work out perfectly. Yeah, about that. The conventional wisdom around retiring at 65 is based on economic conditions that no longer exist, and blindly following this outdated timeline could be one of the worst financial decisions you ever make. Let me be clear from the start. I'm not saying you should work until you drop dead. I'm saying that the specific age of 65 as the default retirement target is destroying people's financial security, and understanding why will change how you think about retirement planning entirely. If you've been operating under the assumption that 65 is the magic number where everything works out, make sure to hit that subscribe button, because today we're exposing exactly why this timeline is financial suicide for most people and what you should be considering instead. Let's start with the most fundamental problem. 65 as a retirement age was established in 1935 when Social Security was created. Back then, life expectancy was around 61 years old. The government set the retirement age at 65 specifically because most people wouldn't live long enough to collect benefits for very long. It was designed to provide a few years of support for the small percentage of people who lived past average life expectancy. Fast forward to today, and life expectancy is approaching 80 years old, with many people living well into their 90s. Think about what this means for your retirement planning. If you retire at 65 and live to 85, that's 20 years of retirement you need to fund, but there's a very good chance you'll live longer than 85. If you live to 90 or 95, you're looking at 25 to 30 years of retirement. You're planning to fund potentially 3 decades of life without a paycheck, which requires dramatically more savings than most people have accumulated. Here's the brutal math that destroys most retirement plans. The 4% rule says you can safely withdraw 4% of your retirement savings each year and your money should last 30 years. If you have $1 million saved, that's $40,000 per year to live on. Sounds reasonable until you factor in that Social Security might only provide another $20,000 per year, giving you $60,000 total annual income. Can you actually live on $60,000 per year for 30 years while healthcare costs explode, inflation erodes purchasing power, and unexpected expenses inevitably arise? For most people, the answer is no. They can't live comfortably on that amount, especially in the later years when healthcare costs skyrocket. So what happens? They either reduce their standard of living dramatically, which makes retirement miserable, or they exceed the safe withdrawal rate and run out of money in their 80s. Neither outcome is acceptable, and both are the direct result of retiring at 65 with insufficient savings and too many years to fund. The Social Security system itself penalizes early retirement at 65. You can start collecting Social Security at 62, but your benefits are permanently reduced by about 30%. If you wait until your full retirement age, which is now 67 for most people, you get your full benefit. If you wait until 70, you get an extra 24% beyond your full retirement age benefit. The difference between claiming at 62 versus 70 is roughly a 75% increase in your monthly benefit for life. Let me put actual numbers on this because it's staggering. If your full retirement benefit is $2,000 per month, claiming at 62 gives you about $1,400 per month. Waiting until 70 gives you about $2,500 per month. That's an $1,100 per month difference, or $13,200 per year over a 25-year retirement. That's $330,000 in additional benefits just for waiting 5 extra years to claim. But here's the problem. Most people retire at 65 and claim Social Security shortly after because they need the income. They can't afford to delay claiming because they're not working anymore. So they lock in permanently reduced benefits because they retired at the traditional age instead of working a few more years to bridge the gap to optimal claiming age. They're leaving hundreds of thousands of dollars on the table because they followed conventional wisdom about when to retire. Healthcare costs are another massive reason why retiring at 65 destroys your money. Medicare doesn't start until 65, so if you retire at 62 or 63, you need to buy private health insurance, which can easily cost $1,500 or more. But even after Medicare starts at 65, it doesn't cover everything. You need supplemental insurance, prescription drug coverage, dental, vision, and long-term care. The average couple will spend over $300,000 on healthcare throughout retirement, and that number is climbing every year. If you retire at 65, you're immediately facing these healthcare costs with no earned income to offset them. Every dollar comes from your savings or Social Security. But if you work until 70, you have 5 more years of employer-provided health insurance, 5 more years of earning income to cover healthcare costs, and you've delayed drawing down your retirement savings during the highest healthcare cost years. Those 5 extra working years can save you $100,000 or more in healthcare costs alone. The sequence of returns risk is particularly brutal for people who retire at 65. This is the risk that the stock market crashes right when you retire, forcing you to sell investments at depressed prices to fund your living expenses. If you retire at 65 and the market crashes in year one of your retirement, you are in serious trouble. You're selling shares at a 30 or 40% loss to pay your bills. When the market recovers, you have far fewer shares to benefit from the recovery, which permanently damages your long-term returns. But if you're still working when the market crashes, you don't have to sell anything. You're still earning income from your job. You might even be able to buy more shares while prices are low. Your retirement portfolio can recover fully because you're not forced to sell during the crash. Working a few years longer provides a critical buffer against sequence of returns risk that can mean the difference between your money lasting or running out. Let's talk about the psychological and identity aspects of retiring at 65 that nobody prepares you for. You've been working your entire adult life. Your career has been a huge part of your identity. You retire at 65 thinking you'll finally relax and enjoy life, but what actually happens for many people is they feel lost, purposeless, and depressed. They don't know what to do with themselves. Their mental and physical health often decline rapidly because they've lost the structure, social connections, and sense of purpose that work provided. Studies show that people who retire too early often experience cognitive decline, depression, and increased health problems. Work keeps you mentally engaged, socially connected, and physically active. When you suddenly stop at 65, you're removing all of those protective factors at once. Many retirees end up spending their first few years of retirement watching TV and declining in health, rather than living the active, fulfilling retirement they imagined. They retired at the conventional age without considering whether they were actually ready psychologically and emotionally. Working longer, even part-time or in a less demanding role, keeps you engaged and healthy. It provides structure and purpose during the transition from full-time work to full retirement. It allows you to gradually adjust to having more free time rather than going from 60 hours a week to 0 overnight. And crucially, it keeps money coming in while you figure out what retirement actually looks like for you. The opportunity cost of retiring at 65 is enormous when you actually calculate it. Let's say you're earning $75,000 per year at age 65. If you work until 70, that's 5 more years of salary, totaling $375,000. You're also not drawing down your retirement savings during those 5 years, so your nest egg has 5 more years to grow. A $1 million portfolio growing at 7% for 5 years becomes $1.4 million. That's an additional $400,000 in portfolio value. Add the 5 years of salary to the additional portfolio growth, and you've added $775,000 to your financial position by working 5 years, plus the higher Social Security benefits from delaying claiming add another $300,000 over a 25-year retirement. You're talking about over $1 million in additional financial resources by working from 65 to 70 instead of retiring at 65. That $1 million is the difference between comfortable retirement and struggling retirement for most people. Now, I can hear the objections. What if you can't physically work until 70? What if your job is demanding and you're burned out? What if you want to enjoy retirement while you're still healthy? All of these are valid concerns, but they're not arguments for retiring completely at 65. They're arguments for being more strategic and flexible about how you transition from work to retirement. If your current job is too demanding, transition to something less stressful. Take a part-time role, consult in your field, find a lower-paying job that you actually enjoy. The goal isn't to keep doing the same work at the same intensity until you're 70. The goal is to keep some income coming in to bridge the gap from 65 to 70 when you can optimize Social Security claiming and give your retirement portfolio more time to grow. Many people find that semi-retirement is actually more satisfying than full retirement. Working 20 or 30 hours a week gives you enough income to avoid drawing down savings, keeps you mentally and socially engaged, and still provides plenty of free time to pursue hobbies and travel. You get the best of both worlds, financial security and personal fulfillment. But this requires rejecting the traditional all-or-nothing approach to retirement at 65. The tax implications of retiring at 65 are another factor that destroys wealth. If you retire at 65 and start drawing from your traditional IRA or 401k immediately, you're taking taxable distributions every year. Those distributions are taxed as ordinary income at your marginal tax rate. You might be in the 22% or 24% tax bracket, meaning you're giving up a quarter of your withdrawal to taxes. But if you work until 70, you can do Roth conversions during your working years when you have income to cover your living expenses. You convert traditional IRA money to Roth IRA over several years, paying taxes at lower rates because you're controlling the timing and amount. By 70, you've converted a substantial portion to Roth, which grows tax-free forever. This tax planning is only possible if you're not forced to draw from retirement accounts immediately at 65 to cover living expenses. The flexibility that working longer provides is worth far more than just the additional income. When you're still earning money, you can be strategic about everything. You can wait out market downturns instead of selling in a crash. You can do tax optimization. You can delay Social Security for maximum benefits. You can pay cash for big expenses instead of taking on debt. You have options. The moment you retire at 65 and cut off your income, you lose all that flexibility. You're locked into whatever your retirement plan was, and you better hope nothing goes wrong because you have very limited ability to adjust. Here's what most financial advisors won't tell you clearly enough. The 4% rule and other safe withdrawal rate strategies were developed assuming a 30-year retirement. If you retire at 65 and live to 95, that's exactly 30 years. You're cutting it incredibly close with zero margin for error. If you live to 100, or if your returns are lower than historical averages, or if you experience higher than expected inflation, or if healthcare costs exceed projections, your money runs out. Working until 67, 68, or 70 dramatically improves your odds of success. You're funding fewer retirement years. Your portfolio is larger. Your Social Security benefits are higher. You've got more margin for error to handle the inevitable surprises. The difference between a 30-year retirement and a 25-year retirement is enormous in terms of how likely your money is to last. So, what should you actually do instead of blindly retiring at 65? First, throw out the idea that there's one correct retirement age. Your optimal retirement age depends on your health, your savings, your career satisfaction, your family situation, and your personal goals. For some people, working until 70 or 72 makes sense. For others, 67 might be optimal. The point is to make an informed decision based on your specific circumstances rather than defaulting to 65 because that's what everyone does. Second, consider a phased retirement rather than an abrupt stop at 65. Reduce your hours, take a less stressful role, or transition to part-time work. Keep some income flowing while you test out retirement and adjust to having more free time. You can always fully retire later if you want, but you can't easily go back to work after being out for several years. Third, run the actual numbers for different retirement ages. Calculate what your Social Security benefits would be at 62, 65, 67, and 70. Model how long your savings would last at different withdrawal rates and retirement ages. Look at the total financial impact of working 2, 5, or 7 more years. Make a data-driven decision instead of an emotion-driven one. Fourth, optimize your Social Security claiming strategy. For most people, delaying until 70 produces the highest lifetime benefits, but this requires having other income to live on from 65 to 70, which means either continuing to work or having sufficient savings to bridge that gap without touching your main retirement portfolio. So, there you have it. Retiring at 65 will destroy your money because it forces you to fund potentially 30 years of retirement with insufficient savings, locks you into reduced Social Security benefits, exposes you to devastating sequence of returns risk, creates healthcare cost problems, eliminates flexibility, and provides no margin for error. Working even a few more years dramatically improves your financial security and gives you options that early retirees don't have. The traditional retirement age of 65 is a relic from a different era with different life expectancies and economic conditions. Following it blindly in today's world is financial suicide for most people. If this changed how you think about when you should actually retire, make sure to subscribe because we need to talk about retirement strategies that actually work instead of outdated conventional wisdom that destroys wealth.